Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Environmental Coffee House. I'm your host, Sandy Shallis. Tonight, we're going to look upon the bomb train. Ooh, ah, ee, ah, ah, come on the bomb train. I made a track of me singing it, and it's pretty bad. Pretty bad. But I've got a show. We've got a show tonight on the bomb trains. So cheers. I am drinking my white willow bark, and let's get going. Let me say hi to you, Scott and Devon. Devon, you are the person that motivated me the most to do this because you were terrified. And being that you were terrified, I was terrified. And Obsolete Optics, hello, hun. And Patty P and K and BB, hi, BB. I know I'm not at Nicole's chat as much as I used to be because of many reasons, but not her, not personal. David Lutz and Lone Wanderer, and it's great to see all of you. It really is great to see all of you. So let's get started with what I've got for tonight. Hi, Nadia. It's good to see you too. And here we go. Let's get going. All right, let's get going. Okay, so here we go. I am going to play this first. This is on Twitter, and I'm pretty sure that the sound effects should work. I will work on it one more time just to make sure that they do, because sometimes these don't like to work when you do it like this. So hang on a second. Okay, here we go. Hopefully you could hear it.
This hasn't been getting a lot of coverage, and the coverage that it has been getting hasn't been very good. So let's talk about the trail derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. East Palestine's about an hour north of Pittsburgh, almost halfway to Cleveland. Norfolk Southern has a rail line that goes right through town, and this derailment happened right on the edge outside of town on the border of PA and Ohio. Of the cars that crashed, 5 of them contained vinyl chloride. It's a monomer used to make PVC. The reporting on this has gotten vinyl chloride confused with polyvinyl chloride, the polymer made out of vinyl chloride. Now, the reason that this distinction is really important is vinyl chloride is very hazardous and very flammable. Polyvinyl chloride is a plastic that's used in like everything. The other thing about vinyl chloride is that it boils at 8 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's shipped in its liquid form. Meaning that when these trains crashed and these started leaking, they weren't just leaking liquid, but they were spewing boiling gas. So vinyl chloride is really toxic. OSHA has the permissible limit of how much you can be exposed to it during an 8-hour shift as a 1 ppm part per million. Average over 8 hours. So prior to this, the biggest spill of this chemical was in New Jersey, where one train car and about 23,000 gallons of vinyl chloride were spilled, but it didn't catch on fire. Now, this crash in Ohio has 5 train cars. These kinds of tanker cars can carry between 25 and 33,000 gallons. Let's call it 250 to 250,000 pounds of vinyl chloride. That's per train car, 5 train cars. There's maybe 1 million pounds of this toxic chemical spilling into the ground and also boiling off into the air. But then it caught on fire. I think this is where the reporting is really bad, because no one is mentioning what the byproduct of vinyl chloride burning is. Of the many byproducts of burning vinyl chloride, one of them is hydrogen chloride. Hydrogen chloride is really unstable and latches onto water, like just water vapor in the atmosphere, and that turns into hydrochloric acid. So right now, government officials from the railroad, both the governor of Pennsylvania and Ohio, are calling burning off the 1 million pounds of this stuff a success, but not mentioning that it means that we have hundreds of thousands of pounds of acid in the air, potentially. Now, ever since engineering school, I've studied a lot of industrial accidents. I just find it really fascinating, and organizations like the Chemical Safety Board, NTSB, and OSHA all have like really good reports available to the public. I think as a designer, it's really good to learn about mistakes. when looking at these kinds of industrial disasters across time, there are a couple things that are pretty universal across all of them. One, the responsible party, in this case, Norfolk Southern Railway, always plays down the reality of the situation. Politicians also just repeat the same lines, and then news outlets just repeat the same. So all we're hearing is the responsible party's word.
I'm sorry. Bad situation in East Palestine, Ohio. A massive industrial accident has occurred and a widening area is exposed. No national media coverage and no accountability for corporate or government officials. And this guy, Don Presto, he said, "It smells so bad outside. I'd compare it to burning plastic and rotten flesh. It's an odd smell, but my lungs kind of hurt after being outside for a few. Maybe the cold, but normally it doesn't affect me. And sorry about the muting. I know that the problem is Ecamm, and it used to shut off when a video played, and then automatically it would unmute. It's not doing it, and I haven't figured out how to fix it. So I am sorry. I will put the sound bar in front of me so I can see it, and I won't do it again. So the first thing I'm going to start out with is the AP, and the AP crews released the toxic chemicals from the derailed tankers in Ohio. So the actual article was another article was Ohio train derailment involves the same chemical as the one released in Philly region a decade ago. All right. But let's go back to this one. Look how that looks. And it's very scary because my daughter lived in Buffalo, and she lived right by the bomb trains. I mean, 2 houses from her. And it used to scare me. It really did. It scared me. So they released the toxic chemicals into the air from 5 derailed tanker cars that were in danger of exploding Monday and began burning it after warning residents near the Ohio-Pennsylvania state line to leave immediately or face the possibility of death. And that's pretty scary, to face the possibility of death. And let's see if this sound effect, I have the death sound effect, but I don't know if it's going to work. Nope, that wasn't the death sound effect. All right, well, it is scary. It was about 500 miles from me, but it was near Devon. And again, Devon, thank you for being here. You inspired me. Governor Josh Shapiro said that thus far, no concerning readings have been detected. That's what they always say. But he did urge Pennsylvania residents within a 2-mile radius of the derailment site to shelter in place and keep their doors and windows closed through the evening. And that was last night. He had spoken to President Joe Biden, who had offered the full support of the federal government. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine earlier ordered evacuations in the area of the derailment that has been smoldering since Friday night. Okay? Pretty awful Friday night. Oh, my. Anyway, I'm going to move up. This, you know the story, all right? I want to go over to this one and talk about the freight train that toppled off the rails, but it was the scene Sunday in Ohio, and it was vinyl chloride The mild, sweet odor, and the CDC and prevention reported, at low levels can cause dizziness and sleepiness. At higher levels, it can cause people to pass out, and eventually die. That's lovely. Just lovely. There's already so much stuff, right? Well, this was in 2012, and 23,000 gallons of vinyl chloride wafted into that town. That's lovely. So we're going to move on because I'm not going to make this a really long show, but I do want to go through the Common Dreams article that was published today. And this one, I'm going to read the whole thing because I think you will get something out of this one. So let's look at this one. Do not let this thing be normalized, said one railroad worker. And these are the people on the front lines. Don't let it become normalized. It's time to take back our rail system from greedy profiteers who externalize the risks and reap profits at our expense. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So, an inter-union alliance of rail workers argued Tuesday that the massive freight train crash in East Palestine, Ohio, late last week was a predictable consequence of Wall Street-backed policy decisions that have hollowed out the industry's workforce, pushed remaining employees to chronic exhaustion, and sacrificed safety for profits. An assessment of the Norfolk Southern train derailment based on currently available information. Railroad Workers United wrote that the root causes of this wreck are the same ones that have been singled out repeatedly associated with the hedge fund initiated operating model known as precision scheduled railroading, which is basically a bunch of crap, right? The group noted that the immediate cause of the wreck appears to have been a 19th century style mechanical failure of the axle on one of the cars, an overheated bearing leading to derailment and then jackknifing, tumbling the cars. There's no way in the 21st century, save from a combination of incompetence and disregard to public safety, that such a defect should still be threatening our communities. They support the RWU. They support nationalization of the U.S. rail system. And I have to say that I do agree with that. Nationalizing would be just, yay. Yay. Let's do that. 40% of the weight of the NS-32N was grouped at the rear of the train, which has always been bad practice and made more dangerous with longer, heavier trains, the statement continued. Oh, God. The fact that almost certainly made the wreck dynamically worse. But increasingly, the PSR-driven carriers, driven to cut costs and crew time by any means necessary, cut corners and leave crews and the public at risk. According to RWU, the short-term profit imperative, the so-called cult of the operating ratio of NS and other Class 1 railroads, has made cutting costs, employees, procedures, and resources the top priority. In this case, NS and other carriers have eliminated many of the critical mechanical positions and locations necessary to guarantee protection against these kind of failures. The crash in Ohio has been years in the making, the group added. What other such train wrecks await us remains to be seen, but given the modus operandi of the Class 1 rail carriers, we can no doubt expect future disasters of this nature. Matthew Janubuck, a senior fellow at the American Economic Liberties Project, explained in the American Prospect last year, Using using PSR, railroad management's job is to drive down the operating ratio or operating expenses as a percentage of revenue. In other words, Wall Street judges railroad success based in part on spending less money running the railroad and more on stock buybacks or dividends, like every fucking thing in this country. I put that in. Theoretically, focusing on lowering operating ratios pushes railroads to be more efficient, to do more with less. But when railroads have the market power they have today, they can instead do less with less, as shippers and workers put it. Norfolk Southern, the product of a merger between Norfolk and a Western Railway and Southern Railway, appears to have followed that model really closely. The company announced a $10 billion stock buyback program last March and has consistently raised its dividend, rewarding shareholders while refusing to provide its workers with basic benefits such as paid sick leave. It's insane, guys. For the full year of 2022, Norfolk Southern reported a record-breaking operating revenue of $12.7 billion. Do not let this thing be normalized. It's time to take back our rail system from the greedy profiteers who externalize risks and reap profits at our expense. As Buck wrote last year, the driving force behind the PSR's widespread adoption was railroad executive E. Hunter Harrison and investor Bill Ackman, a notorious hedge fund manager. After the two pushed through PSR at the Canadian Pacific Railroad, Ackman's colleague Paul Hilal opened an investment fund called Mantle Ridge, which invested $1.2 billion in CSX and successfully pushed CSX to appoint Harrison the CEO. He continued, under Harrison and with the backing of the CSX's board, who saw larger bottom lines in sight, CSX pushed through PSR despite complaints from shippers who reported long delays or lost shipments. Every other railroad has adopted PSR or PSR equivalents. Industry watchers say the one holdout yet to officially adopt the PSR, BNSF, has adopted PSR-like measures. The crash in Ohio late Friday forced many local residents to evacuate to escape a possible explosion and the release of toxic fumes from the train cars, several of which were carrying vinyl chloride. RWU said Tuesday that while many people in the area were and remain evacuated, and property damage to both rail and non-railroad property will no doubt soar into the millions, we dodged a bullet as no rail workers and no trackside residents were killed. This time. Flushing them down. All right. Now we're going to move on. How are we doing in the chat? Okay, guys. Yeah. Yep. $12.7 billion in revenue. A couple of accidents. Cheap in comparison, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, here we go. They said again that was Common Dreams. Now let's move on and let's talk about us. Do you live in an oil train blast zone? Are you one of the 25 million Americans living in an oil train blast zone? The industry is sending explosive, toxic crude via rail right by the homes of 25 million Americans. Find out if you're one of them and join the growing number of people standing up to stop oil trains in their communities, by their children's schools, and where they work. Your address will not be retained on the map. Okay, so actually I wanted to show you this. There's a lot of them. And that's not even everything. I mean, if you go closer, And I can go here in New York. There's a lot of these trade. They're all over the country, like pipelines. It's probably even worse. Does anybody want to give me? Let's see if I can put in a zip code. I don't know. Let's see. Interactive data visualizations. Well, that's what I had there. Search by all impact areas. Let's see. Oh, well, anyway, it was a good try. Let me see if I can go back to what that was. No. All right. So think about this, though. We will have to think about it because it's going to happen all the time. And you do. You live in an oil train blast zone. That really sucks. It does. It just sucks. And I remember the whole time my daughter's house was by them. It just made me crazy. Now, this is the NRDC. It's a big green, but protect your community from bomb trains. Trains carrying highly explosive fossil fuels barrel through unsuspecting communities every day is yours one of them. Now, it's not just that, of course. We saw it's oil derivatives, it's vinyl products, it's polymers, it's horrible oil resin, oil products that are plastics that turn into plastics. And it actually sucks. Now, this was the article. They were talking about the deadliest rail accident, which was 9 years ago. Well, it's going on 10, killing in Quebec, killing 47 people and causing much of the small town to go up in flames. Remember that one? Images of the fires, which were fueled by 74 cars worth of volatile crude oil, opened people's eyes to the extreme dangers of transporting oil by rail. Has it changed anything? No. Since then, dozens of other similar accidents have occurred all across the United States, with more than 25 million people that live within a mile of a crude by rail route. It's not just crude, as I said. It's so many other things. Transport of crude skyrocketed from 9,500 carloads in 2008 to close to 500,000 carloads at its peak in 2014. By 2020, the number dropped to roughly 137,000. In the meantime, a new danger has emerged: the liquefied natural gas. Oh my gosh. Environmental groups estimate that just 22 rail cars of LNG hold the same amount of energy as the Hiroshima bomb. Now, the government previously prohibited the transporting LNG by train, but in 2020, the man we all know and just love, in an effort to boost natural gas exports, gave the dangerous practice the green light. The administration also issued a special permit for a project that would transport LNG 200 miles between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And that's what we're looking at, right? And Ohio, obviously, through major cities like Philadelphia and Trenton. Last year, the NRDC and a coalition of other groups called on the U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg to follow through on his proposal to reinstate the ban. Here's another one in 2016. This picture is the crude oil derailment in Mosier, Oregon. Many people living near rail corridors are not even aware of these potential dangers. And should a derailment or a collision happen, few communities have the equipment or trained personnel to deal with an accident involving large amounts of such volatile materials. But that doesn't mean concerned citizens should feel helpless. So if you live near them, you can find out. And let me see if it's the same map. Yeah, it was. It was just the same thing. All right. All the links are going to be in the show notes. You know that, right? You can also tap into local networks of environmental advocates to learn about ill-conceived proposals like the Gibson LNG terminal in South Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia. educate your local and state officials. So if you feel the need and you have the activist bone, try doing it this way. Maybe this is something that would be important to you. It could be, especially if you live near a place like that. So then I thought, all right, let's take a look at the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Federal Railroad Administration. There's a lot about railroad safety, and there's a lot about them. I just wanted to go over here and talk about the hazardous material, and they talk about the authority delegated to the FRA, Federal Railroad Administration, by the Secretary of Transportation. The Hazardous Materials Division administers a safety program that oversees the movement of hazardous materials. Oh, yeah, okay, hazardous materials. By rail. So there's a whole lot of information here with the regulations and things you can see when you look at their e-library and you look at the link that I am leaving in the show notes, which I really do hope you peruse, all right? Because I don't want to go through all of this, but I wanted to move on. Also, facts about they have a lot of different chemicals here, and not all of them are on the trains, but there are a lot of different hazardous materials that seem to be involved in our lives. And a lot of them. Look at them. Look at all of them. Nerve agents, mustard gas, paraquat, phosgene. Now that was the one, it's the major industrial chemical used to make plastics and pesticides. At room temperature, phosgene is a poisonous gas. It may appear to be colorless or as a white to pale yellow cloud. At low concentrations, it has a pleasant odor of newly mown hay or green corn, but its odor may not be noticed by all people exposed. So there you go. All right. Now we're going to move on. We're going to move on to our illustrious president who, anyway, let's look at this. Biden is poised to make freight trains less safe. You can thank special interests. This was from last year. Once again, Washington is giving us every reason to believe it's selling favors to cronies, even if it means everyone else loses. So it's well known that President Joe Biden, who regularly rode the Amtrak train between Wilmington and Washington as a senator, and to his 2021 presidential inauguration, loves trains, always touting their environmental efficacy and value to the U.S. economy. Yet the Biden White House has been noticeably hostile to the variety of trains that play a far larger role in American life than the ones that carry passengers, trains that carry freight. Worse, this animus may lead to a more dangerous industry and is aided by crony special interests, poisoning policymaking and sowing uncertainty among investors. That dirty word, investors. Specifically, the president's team at the supposedly independent U.S. Surface Transportation Board just finished a marathon 2-day hearing on a controversial regulatory proposal. The idea would force private railroads to subsidize their own competitors and disregard their property rights through a burdensome regulatory change to what is known as forced reciprocal switching, which is the practice of allowing one carrier to access another's infrastructure and customers. Reciprocal switching already occurs voluntarily through private agreements between railroads. Now, the administration wants to give more power to Washington bureaucrats to force open these privately owned networks for use by competitors and to offer below market rates to shippers. While the rule sounds like a backdoor price control, the government asserts that turning more control over to Washington will promote competition. Their argument is that the railroad industry acts like a monopoly. However, data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that over the past few decades, freight rail rates have not significantly increased, a fact difficult to square with the claim that freight rail is abusing its position to charge its customers excessive prices. More worrisome, my colleague Patrick McLaughlin makes a convincing case that mandated reciprocal switching would likely cause more railroad worker accidents and casualties. In a public comment, he writes, reciprocal switching would presumably lead to more switching. Data from the Federal Railroad Administration clearly shows that switching work is far more hazardous than normal operations of over-the-road freight train. For Class 1 railroads, the casualty incident rate in 2019 was 2.79 per 200,000 hours of normal train operation, whereas the casualty incident rate was 7.55 per 200,000 hours of switching operations. Based on 2019 and 2020 accident incident rates, McLaughlin calculates that a 1% increase in switching hours would lead to 107,185 additional switching hours, which would in turn lead to 4.18 additional casualties and 11.59 additional accidents. These assumptions are conservative. To understand why something that sounds so simple could be so dangerous, it's useful to know that a typical switch of one car between two railroads can be complicated, either on its own or in the context of broader network operations. Basically, the only time when it is worth taking on this heightened risk is when it makes economic sense, not when the government says it must be done. The rule change is opposed by a large and varied number of interested parties. These include key allies of the administration, such as labor unions, passenger train companies, and environmentalists, as well as both libertarian and major Democrat aligned think tanks. Call me a cynic, but under these circumstances, I wonder who the administration, via the intermediary of the Surface Transportation Board, is trying to please, especially considering it would be doing it at the expense of its continually stated goals to reduce emissions and improve the supply chain. The answer, as always, seems to be powerful special interests. Yeah, man. In this case, it's shippers. Shippers. The Rail Customer Coalition's letter to the STB makes it clear that they are trying to get the government to artificially deflate their costs. The hearing also demonstrated an uncomfortable chumminess between the regulators, particularly the agency's chair and the ring of regulatory proponents led by multinational chemical companies. Oh my, the chemical companies. Yeah. We love them, don't we? Okay. So, the hearing also demonstrated that, the chemical companies, indeed, as it has been from the beginning, the biggest cheerleader for change is the powerful American Chemistry Council, which includes Delaware-based DuPont, a longtime political ally and campaign contributor of the president. You don't say. So here you have it once again. Washington is giving us every reason to believe it's selling favors to cronies, even if it means worker safety, railroad efficiency, supply chain, and the environmental the environment loses in the process. Yep. So where are we, guys? In a losing environment? Let's see, guys. Where are you? Yeah, Devon. Gee, where is DuPont from anyway? All right. So I have one more article, and then we'll have a little chit chat. Okay. This article is from Food and Water Watch. You want bomb trains running through your neighborhood? Neither do we. Trump okayed the liquefied natural gas bomb trains, but instead of repealing, Biden's administration is allowing operators special permits unless enough of us say no in time. And this was from 2021, so I'm sure that it hasn't been stopped or postponed. So if I just wanted to look at the 2020 rule. It eliminated notice and comment requirements that would have otherwise accompanied every application for LNG transportation by rail. So fence line environmental justice communities disproportionately impacted, right? Disproportionately impacted. Could remain unaware that such hazardous shipments were moving past their homes. Suspending the rule temporarily, it does not address the underlying shortcomings of that 2020 rule. So none of it is clean. None of it's clean. And I'm just going to move on from that one. And Earthworks also has a petition. And theirs was delivered to the Biden administration to reinstate the national ban on transporting LNG. Put the public first. And this was from May. But what about all the other shit? We were just talking about the stuff that is the building blocks of plastics. So the Earthworks, they did do this. They got 15,000 signatures. And they submitted it to the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, which is PHMSA, the arm of the U.S. Department of Transportation. And actually, I don't think they've done anything. They said they called on the Biden administration to do the right thing. But I don't know. I don't think anybody does. Anais Peterson is a petrochemicals campaigner, and there is no such thing as clean or responsibly sourced liquid natural gas and everything else. And I'm talking about all of it, all of those things. What just happened in Ohio, So they were talking about the gift in 2020 was the gift it was to the oil and gas companies. And here's somebody else talking about it from the Rail Pollution Protection Pittsburgh. All right. That's an organization. So there's a lot of organization, guys. And if you're interested, you can get involved if you live in these areas. And again, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but you can see what happened to that pipeline. And then I wanted to tell you, I won't sing it, but I had started it, right? And I don't think it came out very good, but I couldn't play the Cat Stevens music.
Bomb train sounding louder. Glide on the bomb train.
It sounds bad. And I don't want to get a copyright.
The bomb train, holy roller. Everyone jump upon the bomb train. Come on now, the bomb train. Get your bags together.
I'm done. I don't want to hear that anymore. All right. So basically, I am done with all the material that I had. And because I'm done with all the material I had, we can chit chat a little bit more about what we were talking about. And like and subscribe, buy us a coffee, all that good stuff. So let's see where you are in the chat, guys. All right. All right. Oh, yes, the State of the Union is on tonight, of course. That's going to be soon. So, yes, you did. Devon got very lucky with the shit show. Yeah. The Doom Train. Oh, I like that. That's a good one. The Doom Train. Yes. Well, what are we going to give the flush to? I guess we'll give the flush, the real flush, the new flush, to the bomb trains. All right? Okay. All right. There we go. Dwayne said, I thought Ohioans were pro-capitalism. Why would they care about a train blowing up with chemicals? Why would they, right? Cindy, Cindy. It's good to see you here. Scott, yeah, he's going to gaslight the country tonight. Many times. Hi, Tom. Hey, and Earl, any flush will do. Well, anyway, I can't right now because I don't have it set up. So the 5 tanker loads of vinyl chloride, wonder where it all went. Nothing that is created can be destroyed. Absolutely not. You are completely right. Completely right. I just want to tell you guys thank you. And thank you for coming and listening. Mario is from the state of Oregon, now living and working in the state of Louisiana, which is hell on earth, oil state. I cannot express myself since 90% of the people will become violent toward me for thinking otherwise. I see the oil tanks go by on a train more than once a day. Oh, Mario. Well, you've got your little family here with us. I don't know if anything, if we could do much with that. But, oh, yeah. Oh, it's, Max said it's still called Monsanto there. We can flush Bear. Should we do another flush? All right, well, we'll do that flush. There's a lot of flushes here. Yeah. Devon, the ones making munitions on Army bases get a free pass from the EPA. Outright burn chromium soaked in gasoline. True story. Do it all year long since 1942. I think it's kind of like in a mess, huh? Don't you think we're in a mess? I mean, every show I do, it's kind of a mess. It's about something that's a mess, right? All right. Well, listen, it's been great to have you. Yes. Plunder the planet in the worst ways. And Dwayne and his little toilets. Thank you, Dwayne. Dwayne and your little toilets. Yes. Okay. Inspiring you to put more effort into discovering what's on the trains through town and to figure out the best plans for prep. Yes, I want you to do that. I think it's a great idea. And you can report to us. And if you ever want to do a show with me on what you're doing or what you find out, that would be wonderful, Trulia. It would be wonderful if you wanted to. You don't have to, but you can certainly let us know what's going on. Okay? All right, everybody. Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate all of you. And yes, okay, let's do that. Let's give an applause to the rail workers. I'm going to find the applause again since I don't have half of the things I had set up on my Stream Deck didn't work right when I redid it, when I updated this software. So let's give an applause. Here we go. And this is for them. Yes, absolutely. Hi, Warren. And Warren is going to be living here in the summers on the property outside in the beauty. And I'm thrilled for that. Everybody give me a thumbs up Thank you very much. And don't forget our Buy Me a Coffee. Don't forget we are not monetized. It is just basically me, Jennifer, and the rest of the team when I can get the rest of the team here. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love you. And I just want to say one more thing. I know I'm not regular in times. I say that all the time. I do a show when I feel like I can do a show. I was going to try something in the mornings on Wednesdays. I don't know if I can do it. I really don't. It would allow, I know that people from the West Coast would have a hard time joining if I did it at 10 a.m., but people in the UK might be able to join in Europe. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it tomorrow, but thank you again. I love you guys. Bye.